When they came in, right? And no one, I'm reading it and I'm like, all right, these are from last night. And nobody did them. Like, there's no response to them. There's no texting them back saying, okay, I'm dropping it off, or the price. Like, there was no response whatsoever. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? So I pick up the phone. I call the voicemail to see what happened with the voicemail, see if there was any messages. There was messages about people trying to get in contact with us, and they couldn't get in contact with us. So the motherfucker ended up not doing any deliveries the night before, and I don't know what the fuck he was doing. So I was pissed. I was furious. I was like, this is so asinine. I'm like, this is the guy I'm getting the business with. Again, we were just putzing around. I had big plans for this. I knew it was going to be something great, right? So who I am, I find that very hard to explain at times, right? So I consider myself an artist. As of now, first and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur, self-employed. That's not really working out so well for me. I have had many, I started a few businesses and they've pretty much all failed. I hate using that word because let's just say it was all a learning experience, and I will get into all that in once we move this move this along. Like I said, I'm from Long Island, New York. I was born and raised here. I come from a middle-class Italian family. It was an interesting childhood. I have dealt with a lot between my parents. My mother, God bless her, she is an extremely strong and extraordinary woman. She and my father were divorced at an early age for me. I think around 14, 15. It was a really bad divorce. It was chaos. It was craziness. My father put us through a lot. And I'm not going to get into all that right this moment. This isn't really what this is all about. I'm just going to kind of give you like a little glimpse of what my upbringing was. You could ask questions in the comments, and I would be more than happy to answer them. It was a very interesting childhood. Not saying that I didn't have it good at times. Like I said, and I think like my little disclaimer being, in no way or form am I complaining about my life. I have been through a lot. I know that there are a lot of people out there struggling and are in a worse situation than I am in today and was in my childhood. I hear horror stories about what happens to some kids and families and people, and I am just grateful to be alive today. I'm grateful for the things I did go through. Like some people could harp on the past and, which I have a tendency of doing as well. Like, we're going to also get into that about me dwelling on certain decisions that kind of I let define my life and the way I am now. It's unfortunate. We're all not dealt the same deck of cards, but we have to do our best to utilize those cards accordingly, right? Not all of us get that right away. Not all of us understand that. Not all of us are taught that. Not all of us have some of us are late bloomers, let's say. I was one of those late bloomers, meaning after my parents divorced, I was in a weird place. Not that I never had any guidance to begin with. The guidance was God. It was Bible. It was church. That's all it was. That's all everything was about. And to me, I did it because that's all I knew. I was involved with it because that's all I knew. When I look back at it now, I'm like, that was really interesting times growing up in this environment, right? So again, I can get into more details about that at a different time, but not right now. after my parents' divorce, in particular, became very distant. I didn't, unfortunately, and my mother had to work 2 to 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our head and food on the table, right? And to this day, I never contributed in the way I was supposed to, like I should have. I did nothing but cause nonsense, and I regret that to this day. So if I know I've heard stories about similar issues of parents divorcing and the kid stepping up, the oldest of the family stepping up and just doing his thing and then contributing, and I didn't do that, and till this day, I regret that. So if you are someone who is experiencing a family divorce breakup, I highly suggest and recommend you step up to the plate and kind of help out a little bit. I eventually got there. I went through a rebellious stage, and then obviously I went to college. I was planning on going there for a few years. That didn't work out. I hated school. I wasn't a big fan of school. The only reason I liked it because I played sports, and I enjoyed hanging out with everyone and hanging with my friends and playing sports. School was not my forte. I couldn't stand history class. I couldn't stand. I didn't like any class except for art class. Science sucked. I just didn't enjoy it, and there's nothing against any of those subjects, and I just don't understand the whole school system and why they teach what they teach. And that's a whole nother story. But I went to college. I ended up going to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, where I studied fine art and graphic design. Well, I was supposed to anyway, but I ended up only going for a year. I got through the first year and realized that I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't want to do it anymore. I figured I was wasting my time and money. Thankfully, I got some loans. I just didn't. Even though it was art school, it was different. It was just. I had a good time. Don't get me wrong. Like, coming from a sheltered life, interestingly enough, the way I grew up, and then going to college and being exposed to the real world, all hell broke loose. I started experimenting with drugs. I was smoking weed, drinking. In my younger days, I was anti all that. Plus, I was an athlete, so I didn't even get involved in any of that stuff. The smoking, the drinking, the cigarettes, the weed. The drugs, the heavy drugs, didn't come until later on, after college. When I ended up leaving college, I decided, Pratt Institute, I should say, I decided to try to go back and go to Suffolk Community College because it was closer to home. I think I went for a semester or two, and I said, fuck this. It's not for me. I can't do this. Even though it was art school, it was the art portion of Suffolk County Community College, and I just couldn't do it. So I ended up hanging out with some of my buddies that I went to high school with, and they were involved with just the wrong people, the wrong things. We got caught up in some serious drugs. I got caught up doing cocaine, smoking crack, drinking a lot, taking pills, Oxycontin, Xanax, whatever you name pills-wise, I was doing it. The cocaine and the crack it was a progression there. It was cocaine for a long time, and then we escalated to the crack, and then we ended up, I'm talking years of this nonsense going on, and I'll never forget feeling the way I did at the end there, where I finally escaped it, finally got out of it, and decided to move on and do something better with my life. I was wasting so much time. It's so disgusting how much time I wasted back then. And when I look back at it now, it's just like, what the fuck, what were you doing? But I think I kind of mentioned earlier, everything that has happened to me has made me who I am today, and for that I am grateful. Even though a lot of it was dark, a lot of it was depressing, and a lot of it was just in a bad place. It kind of, in dealing with my childhood, it made me the person I am today, and I'm proud to be the person I am today, and I'm thankful for that. We all have our shit. We all got stuff we got to deal with. We all have our issues. We all have our circumstances that pop up. And, there's a lot of things that happen in our life that define, or what we think defines us as a human being, right? Which I will also get into shortly. The the getting involved with the drugs was a long, drawn out journey, let's just say. Like I said, I remember towards the end, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to get out of this. This is ridiculous. Like, we were working all week. I mean, I was a functioning drug addict. I wasn't the guy out there begging for money or stealing things and selling stuff. Like, I did not take it that far. I was considered a functioning drug addict, and like every weekend we would spend our entire paychecks on cocaine and crack, and it was complete chaos, you know, like, and even ended up doing that during the week at times, missing work, you know, being stupid. Again, that went on for years. So towards the end of all that, those dark fucking years, like dark years, I eventually told myself I needed to get out of this. I cut all ties with the people who were involved with this group. Unfortunately, a few of my really good friends have passed away from overdosing a few years back, actually, because they never put it down. They got involved with heroin. They just couldn't let it go. They were addicted, and it was to the point where it was pretty bad for them. You know, like, they sobered up here and there. They went to, you know, meetings. They went to Phoenix House. Like, it was a long struggle for them as well. But they didn't make it. You know, they let the shit get the best of them. And two of them were really dear friends of mine, and that was hard. It was hard dealing with that. It was hard knowing that I got out, they didn't, and they just ended up dying. You know, like, I'm thankful. I'm so thankful I'm out of that. I look back at that shit now, and I'm like, wow, I cannot believe I did that. I cannot believe the amount of money, the amount of time, the amount of shit I snorted up my nose, and pills I took. Like, I should be dead. You know, I should be dead. There's no way I should be alive right now. Did I kill a few brain cells? I'm sure I did. I know I did. I know I did. All jokes aside, though, getting out of that environment was huge for me, and I knew I needed to do something bigger and better with my life. Did it work out the way I wanted to? Not yet, no. I remember, obviously, I was getting jobs. I was working for businesses. I was doing waitering. I was doing beer truck deliveries. I was doing retail. I mean, you name it. I did tow truck driving. I worked for a local carpenter for a long time in the midst of all of this. The carpenter job was in the midst of me and my drug days. Like, it was chaos. It was crazy. But I ended up, towards the end of all that, again, I ended up getting a job in the union, local 45 at the time. I'm not sure if they still are local 45. Excuse me. And I'd go back and forth to the city every day, work ridiculous hours, get up at ridiculous hours, get the 4:45 train, get out on the train, go out there, be to work by 7 a.m., work overtime pretty much every day, because I was an apprentice for a year, 2 years, whatever it was, 3 years. And you would work ridiculous overtime. So I'm talking 15 plus hours a day, 18 plus hours a day, 19 plus hours a day, sometimes sleeping on the job. Like, it was nuts. I made good money. It was great. And if I had stuck that out, I'd probably be in a really good situation right now. However, I knew I should not be there. I needed to get out of that environment, meaning it wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. I had bigger, better plans, and I wanted to work for myself. I hated working for someone. It's just not me. I have no problem working up the ladder, but at the same time, like, okay, I get up, climb this ladder, and then one day somebody kicks out the ladder from underneath me, and then what happens? You know, like, I hear stories about this all the time. People moving up in the corporate world and working for a company for 30 years, 20 years, 40 years, whatever it is, and then getting fired or losing their job or getting laid off. I mean, I don't know. Again, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, my first true entrepreneur experience, I believe after that, the carpenter's job, I ended up trying to start my own pool cleaning business. And I don't know why, I guess because I knew how to do it, and I figured, all right, well, it's easy money. I can go clean pools, vacuum pools, and shit like that, and then start my own, business. Have clients, and go do them on whatever I need to. Make my own schedule. I thought it was a great idea. I did it for a little while. The girl at the time that I was dating at the time, her father had worked for the post office, and I'm not going to tell you his name because he'd probably get in trouble for this. I had printed up a ton of flyers, like probably hundreds of flyers. And I had, I don't remember what it looked like. I mean, I think I just designed it on Photoshop or something real silly. It must have been something so silly. It was Mike's Pool Service, whatever. And he had taken a handful of these flyers and brought them along his route and handed them out for me, alongside me doing it as well. I used to go door to door and hand out flyers to get some, generate some business. I ended up generating some business, and I did it for a little while, and I figured, I'm like, why am I doing this? What am I doing this just because I know how to do it? I don't want to do this. I don't want to fucking clean pools. I did think that maybe, okay, I'll get it to a point where I got enough clientele, I could hire someone and send them out to do it, right? But I didn't want to be involved in doing that type of work. I don't know. I could have probably taken it to a different level, but I didn't. A few years after the whole the pool service thing, and then dabbling in different jobs, trying to figure out what the fuck I'm going to do with my life, I again, art not being in the picture at all. I have an extreme talent in being creative and artistic, and for so many years I wasted that talent. Like I wasted it. Like I didn't do anything with it, and eventually I got back into the art, which we'll get into. I don't want to jump around here, but all right. So Uber Eats and DoorDash. Okay, I was the original idea man behind all that, and I say that because it's true, and I say it because like I cannot like. Okay, so here's the story. Here's how it happened. I used to go to my buddy's house. We used to hang out all the time. We used to smoke some weed. That was the one thing I didn't give up, was smoking weed. I used to smoke it here and there on occasion. Every day that ended with a Y. And we would sit around. We'd play some video games. We'd hang. We'd bullshit. We'd produce some music. At the time, I was producing music as well, which I will also get into. This is used to be a hobby of mine, and I was pretty damn good at it. It's a whole another story. Remind me to get into that. We would hang out and just do our thing and order food, right? So we would order delivery service, and the only thing you could get back then, and again, this is 12, 13, maybe 14 years ago, we'll say, probably, if I look at the date. Don't quote me on that. It was definitely over 10 years ago. I'm saying 12, 13, 14 years ago. I'm horrible with dates. Like I have a hard time, putting a timeline together of some of these events. So I'm doing my best to remember what I can remember. So we would sit around, smoke some weed, and order some food, right? And we would get pizza and Chinese food. And what else? Oh wait, that was it. That were the only two options that you can get was pizza and Chinese food. Your local pizzeria and your local Chinese food place, right? So it dawned on me. I'm sitting there. I'm like, yo, why can't we have Applebee's right now, or order a gyro, or for some fast food place, right? Or anything we want. Why come there's no other options available? Like these places were not delivering at the time, and there was no service to do it. And I'll never forget sitting there and looking at him and being like, yo, we need to start a business that picks up anything you want from any place and deliver it. And I'll never forget my friend's face looking at me, and like, we were stoned, obviously. I'm like, yeah, man. And he looks at me and goes, yo, it's a fucking great idea. Let's do it. And I'm like, yeah, man, let's do it. So we're sitting there, we're putting some sketches together about the logo and trying to come up with names. Eventually, I came up with the name which I give myself a little pat on the back for because it was very creative. I feel it was creative, called Munchies Delivery, right? And not the Munchies you're thinking of. Munchies spelled Munchease, like Munch Ease, but one word. So it was like we got the Munchies. We're gonna hook you up. We're gonna ease that munch for you. Oh my goodness. When I talk a lot, I burp a lot. I don't know why. Excuse me for that. So I ended up buying a domain, getting a domain space. We looked up a bunch of different things. I came up with ihavethemunchies.com. Clever, right? Yes. I built the website for us. We ended up buying a separate phone for the business, a little small bullshit phone, not like the ones you have nowadays, smartphones. Those really didn't exist. I mean, they might have just been starting to come out then. I'm not sure about the time frame on that either. I remember getting just some bullshit phone, but I could be wrong. They might have had some smartphones at the time, but I think we couldn't afford something on the higher end, so we decided to go with some bullshit T-Mobile, whatever. I don't remember the prepaid service phones, whatever it was. We set that up, and I remember us going on Vistaprint. I put some graphics together at the time because I still knew how to use Photoshop. I was very good at Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop for 20 years today, like 20-something years. Back then, it was not obviously as many years, but I was very fluent in Photoshop. And we put together some magnets for the car, business cards, obviously, the entire website. We were looking into buying these units that you could put on top of the car, like I'm sure you see nowadays, pizza places, Papa John's, and all these places, they have these. Domino's does it. It's the magnets that go on top of the car, and they were extremely expensive at the time. And being broke at the time, not having the funds to invest in a business, living my stupid, wasting time life at the moment again. For a long time, that's the way my life was going. I just was trying to get through each day, right? So anyway, I decide to buy some plexiglass. I had some paint. We bought some glue, bought some magnets. We ordered some magnets online, and I built and hand painted this shit. This plexiglass, we had cut it out. My buddy was into glass, like glass making, and he used to work for a glass company. So he had the connections to get some of the plexiglass, the glass. So we ended up getting scrap pieces, which didn't cost us really any money. And we built this unit. I built this unit that we could attach some magnets to, put a light in it, and then plug it into your cigarette lighter thing, whatever that is, right? And we would put it on top of our car. I ended up making 2 of these, one for my car, one for his car. Crazy shit. I actually have a funny story about what happened to both of them eventually, because I mean they lasted a long time. They really did. And all right, so I'll actually just tell a story. I'm up maybe a few months down the road of utilizing these things, and you know what? I'm going to hold off on that because there's got to be a segue for that. There's no segue for that. So, okay, so we decided to put this business together. We put it together, set up the phone, activate it, and I'll never forget the launch day. We're both sitting there in this guy's house and sitting there hanging out, looking at the phone, literally just staring at the phone because we had publicized, we put out flyers, we put out business cards, we had the website up, and we were sitting there looking at the phone like, okay, so we just opened up, like it was like whatever time it was. I think we were only doing nights at the time because we weren't sure how it would work. So we only wanted to do a few nights a week just to see what would happen. I think it was, we started 7 nights a week. I think it was every night, if I remember correctly. Anyway, that's irrelevant. So we're sitting there looking at the phone, and we're looking at each other, looking at the phone, looking at each other. It's like 4 o'clock or whatever time we decided to open. I do not remember what time it was. It was in the late afternoon, evening, whatever. And the phone rings. I'm like, oh God, okay. You want to answer it? You want me to answer it? You answer it. And we went back and forth for a second, like, oh, just fucking answer the phone. So I pick up the phone and answer it. And I'll never forget this person. The first words out of their mouth, is this Munchies Delivery? I'm like, yeah, it's Munchies Delivery. Is this a joke? I'm like, no, this is not a joke. This is the real deal. What's up? He goes, I just had to call and find out if this was real or not. I said, you guys are really picking up and delivering food? Whatever. We talked for a minute. He's like, okay, I'm going to call back. I cannot believe this exists. I'm telling everybody I know about it. Blah, blah, blah. Hangs up the phone. A few minutes later, the phone rings again. Pick it up. Hi, this is Munchies. How can I help you? I'm telling you, one phone call after the next, people just asking if it was real. It was so crazy how many phone calls we had that first night on just asking if it was legit, right? So we ended up getting a few orders that night, and we ended up going out and doing them. We were so excited, like, okay, this is dope. We only charged $5 for the delivery in the beginning because we figured it was just us. $5 just to go deliver it. So now we had to. So the logistics behind all this was a little crazy because apps and things like that weren't really prominent yet. Like there was no serious apps for stuff like this, or like it wasn't even a thought to do an app. It was just like website, phone call, text message. On the website it said either call this number or send us a text with your order, right? So we it wasn't like we used a PayPal or had all that set up yet. Weren't really thinking that much into it yet. So like we have to do this on the trust, or possibly those options weren't available. That's probably why I didn't think of it. So anyway, so we had to do this on the trust system. Basically, we would lay out the money, go pick up the food. They would obviously give us their order. We would go drive, pick up the food, pay for it, hold on to the receipt, obviously, drop the food off, show them the receipt, or text them on the way. Okay, let them know what's going on, how much it is, be prepared, and then we go drop off the food. It was incredible that people had no problem paying the $5. Like it was just a no-brainer for people, especially groups of people. Like $5 is nothing. And then they would tip ridiculous amount of money. It was crazy. The tips, they just throw you $10, $20, $10, $5. It went really, really well. It was exciting because we're like, all right, we got something really good here. This is going to be really cool. Probably a week into doing this, we would share the phone. We'd go back and forth. He'd take it one night, I'd take it the other night, because obviously lived in different places. So it was kind of like, let's work this out. And then if you have extra calls the night you're working, you call me up and I'll get up and go do it, vice versa, right? That first week, I ended up getting, I ended up getting a phone call because I was doing murals at the time. I was advertising for murals, and it was very slow. I did a couple murals at like families' houses. I did one for my nephew, and I started building up some type of a business, let's just say. But it was very, very sporadic. Okay, so I got this phone call from a gentleman in Queens, New York, and he owned a laundromat, and he wanted me to come take a look at his laundromat because he was curious about getting some pricing and ideas for a mural. So I ended up telling my buddy about this. I said, listen, I got to do this estimate, yada, yada, yada. I don't know what's going to happen if I get the job. I'm going to have to do it, obviously, because I need money coming in. I have no money coming in. Now, granted, my buddy, he was working with this glass place, but ended up losing his job somehow and ended up going on unemployment. I don't know the whole story behind that. It's irrelevant. But at the time Munchies was going on, he ended up becoming unemployed and collecting unemployment. So he had some funds coming in, and he was okay. He could pay his bills and pay his rent, do what he had to do. I didn't have that. I literally had to go out and find work. So I'm bringing that up because, long story short, I ended up booking the job to do the mural, whatever it was. I think $3,000, $3,500. It was a very, very low price. I just needed to do the work, and it was now. I personally do my murals all by hand brush and hand painted, right? There are a lot of people who could do them with spray paint. There's a ton of muralists out there that use spray paint and they could bang shit out in no time. My style was brushing, do it all by hand. And it took a lot longer than it should. It took a lot longer than they were supposed to. So I had planned, again, this was out in Queens. I had to go out there 5-6 days a week to do this and basically work from morning, noon, and night to get it done. So unfortunately, the timing was really bad because Munchies had just started, and I had ended up booking this job to do the mural so I could have some real income. Because obviously, I mean, we were getting calls, and it was starting to get really crazy at times with the phone calls for the deliveries, but it's not like I could use that money. That money was supposed to go back into the business and buy some other phone, buy stuff for the car, buy whatever we needed, right? And then obviously have a nice lump some so we could utilize to purchase the meals and do whatever we need to do, gas and so forth. It was business expenses. So it's not like I could live off of that money. So I needed to go and find work. I ended up getting that job. And my buddy, I'll never forget, I said, listen, you're going to have to man the business for a couple weeks while I go do this. I know we're open at night, but if I'm working from morning all the way till whatever time I decide to get done, 6, 7, 8, whatever time it was, you're going to have to, I can't do that all day and then do this every night. So I don't mind doing it here and there. I will help out. I'm not trying to escape from my business. That's the last thing I want to do because I was so excited about it. It was just unfortunate timing, right? So I'll never forget my friend's reaction to me going out and saying I need to do this and him getting extremely pissed off, basically saying he didn't want to do this every night. He didn't want to be in charge of it. And he was basically saying, I don't understand. I still, to this day, I can't wrap my mind around his thought process through all this, because it was like I was looking at the bigger picture here. I wasn't looking at the small. I'll go fucking do the work. I have no problem doing the work. I'll do every delivery if I needed to, right? It wasn't even about that. It was the fact that I needed money and I had to do what I had to do. So it was a huge red flag for me after him kind of bitching about this a little bit, and not like, I'm like, we got into a huge argument about it, unfortunately. And I basically left him to do it. I said, I have no other option, man. I have to do this. You have to do this. Do this for me. I don't understand. Do it. You're doing it for us. It's not even for me. We're building this business together, right? So what the fuck? Anyway, I remember probably about a week into the job, the mural job, I ended up driving home one night and he calls me. He goes, listen, he goes, I need you to do tonight. I just don't feel like doing it. I need some time off. And it was, again, this was like another flag. I'm like, this motherfucker's sitting home all day smoking weed, and he has nothing to do except for when night comes around to go do deliveries, and he doesn't want to do it. It was so mind blowing to me. I was so frustrated. So I said, bro, I don't feel like doing this tonight either. I said, as much as I want to, I want to do this stuff, but I've been out here all day fucking painting a mural. And anyway, I ended up saying, fuck it, I'll do it. Whatever, I'll do what I have to do. I ended up going to pick up the phone from him. And I brought the phone back to my house, and I turned it on. We had it turned off for when we weren't open, with a message saying, you know, our hours and stuff like that. I turned the phone on, and a few messages pop up, and it showed you the time and when it happened, and then when they came in, right? And no one, you know, I'm reading it, and I'm like, all right, these are from last night, and nobody did them. Like, there's no response to them. There's no texting them back saying, okay, I'm dropping it off, or the price. Like, there was no response whatsoever. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? So I pick up the phone. I call the voicemail to see what happened with the voicemail, see if there was any messages. There was messages about people trying to get in contact with us, and they couldn't get in contact with us. So the motherfucker ended up not doing any deliveries the night before, and I don't know what the fuck he was doing. So I was pissed. I was furious. I was like, this is so asinine. I'm like, this is the guy I'm getting the business with. Again, we were just putzing around. I had big plans for this. I knew it was going to be something great, right? So I am getting really long-winded here, and I guess I'm giving you all those details because I want to share the experience about why what happened. All right. Anyway, whatever. So we ended up getting into a huge argument about this. I ended up, it was like, this went on for weeks of us going back and forth about the shit, and him not wanting to do anything and asking for that time off. And like, it was just like, then he was taking money out of the pot, because we put all the money into a jar and leave it there, jar, box, whatever it was. And everything kind of went towards what we needed for the business. It was IOUs in there about stupid shit, cigarettes, blah, blah, blah. Like, it just got so out of control. So I ended up cutting ties, long story short, other bullshit, but that was whatever. I ended up cutting ties with him and cutting him out of the business. I said, dude, this is my business. I'm not dealing with this. You obviously don't want to do it. You obviously want to be a bum, whatever. I ended up taking over everything, because we ended up getting an accountant. We ended up trademarking everything and copywriting, and we did a lot. Like, we ended up putting the money towards those certain things. So I had to get him off the paperwork. I had to get him off the bank account. It was just a whole ordeal. Ended up doing that all. And now, remember, going into this, there was 2 of us. Now we're down to just me. Just one person handling all this. Now the phone calls were coming in and coming in and coming in. Like, it was getting crazy. I'll never forget, man, so many nights driving around, the phone in my hand. Back then you could be on the phone and not have to worry about getting a fucking ticket. FYI, in New York. Now you can't do that shit. I mean, obviously there's other ways around it. But anyway, driving, I had this thing in my ear, on my shoulder, taking writing the shit down, right? Or I had him on speaker, whatever the case was. I don't think there was a speaker on that phone. It was a piece of shit phone. So I'm doing this and I'm driving and I'm fucking driving and I'd have to pull over. I'd take their message, the order down. I'd have to organize it, make sure I got the right one, write the address down, all this other shit. They would text me messages as well too. Now I'm driving with my knee. I'm speeding. I'm driving like a lunatic. Like it was just so, because obviously you want to get the runs done as fast as possible, meaning because you don't want them waiting for 45 minutes or an hour or 2 hours. Like there were nights where, unfortunately, it was so busy that I couldn't get to some of the orders, meaning like it took hours to get these people their food. And it was so bad that I had to figure out a way to make this work. Again, the original plan was to have two of us. Did I realize it was going to blow up so big right away? No, I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to just kind of dribble in here and there, but word was spreading like wildfire in the area, right? So it was crazy. I was getting phone calls from other states, Florida, Connecticut, Jersey, Pennsylvania, California, Texas, Kentucky, you name it. Like all these states, people were calling, yo, do you have this service available by us? Is this just a local thing by you guys? Like they were asking for this service. People wanted this service. I'm telling you, it spread like wildfire. So what's crazy about all this is I did this for about a year. I had one person approach me looking to invest. Not knowing anything about the investment side of it and the financial side of it and how to really expand this, because I've never did it before. I didn't have anybody to lean on to get advice. I didn't look for anybody to give me advice on it. I figured I could just figure this out and do it on my own. I'll never forget. The guy calls me. He wants to meet up. He wants to talk about the business. I'm looking to invest in something like this. This is a great idea. How do we expand this? Blah, blah, blah. So me, my dumbass, I put together a proposal. I'm sitting there for days and I'm writing this stuff up. I'm thinking about what I need to do, how we're going to do it. And I put the proposal together. We ended up meeting at Applebee's, I think it was. We sat there and talked for about a half hour, 40 minutes. Not even that long. It was probably less than that. It felt like forever because I was extremely nervous. I gave him the proposal, and then I never heard back from him. So it wasn't even like there was some negotiating going on. I know I fucked something up. I said something wrong. The proposal was retarded, probably. Who the hell knows? I probably still have that on my hard drive somewhere, which would be interesting to look at. So that was the one opportunity that I had to maybe possibly get an investment. I had friends helping me when I needed. It was chaos at times. I would call somebody up, say, dude, can you just go take care of this for me real quick? Keep the fund, keep the fee, and keep the tip. It's all yours. Just hook me up. All I cared about was pleasing the customer, obviously. So this went on for over a year. And what ended up happening, the service, it was doing very well, but I wasn't taking the steps that I needed to take to grow it. I didn't take the proper steps to hire people. Like I couldn't afford to hire people. And I was like, how do you pay these people if it's only $5? I ended up moving it up to $10 at some point because it was not worth going out for $5. It just wasn't. I figured that out kind of soon, sooner than later, thankfully. And again, the tips were still amazing. It was just a great business. And again, I'm driving around every night. It was probably 7 nights a week. And then I ended up obviously adjusting the schedule because some nights were extremely slow. Some nights nobody would call, and I would say, all right, well, I changed the schedule around depending on obviously how much volume was coming in on each night. So I would adjust that and then take certain nights off. So it was going really well. I wasn't making a ton of money. It had nothing to do with the money. It was more about the business. It was like I knew this could be really something big. Long story short is I couldn't find him, didn't get the money from him, didn't hear from him, and I had to basically reimburse that money. I had to take that out of my bank. I was broke after that. Couldn't afford to give all of it. So I had to explain to him what happened, and I ended up losing my job over it.